Good evening, everybody. I'm here again with Daniel Knight, who has been on the show twice now, I think. So this is your third time?
Either once or twice. I know I've been on here before, but
Well,
it's again.
yeah. Great
Bah.
conversation, either way. But so one of the things that we did a while ago is just because, like friends do, when you're into a thing, you talk about the thing. And then we were talking about some things that we'd like to see that might be slightly different. And so we started to talk about different detachments. And then finally, after just throwing stuff at the wall for like 3 days, we decided we're going to make a document and actually try to hammer this out and then make some content. So here's that sweet content. But before we dive into that too far, I know you went to a teams tournament lately. You want
Yes.
to
That
do a
was
quick 5 minute recap?
2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. That was a quick recap at least. It was an event we had over in Kelowna. It was the second actual competitive teams event we've had in the Low Mainland, or no, in BC for Western Canada. It was just 10 teams, 5-man teams events, 2 days for 5 rounds. We ended up getting third or fourth, I believe, for placings. We won 4 out of our 5 matches at least. Um, Great event. I highly recommend for people to try teams if you ever get the chance, at least to see if it's for you or not. It's a really good environment if you want to go with a bunch of buddies and meet some new people and have a different experience for Warhammer. To put it this way, the Necron player in our team, he had the best time of his life because he explained he was the monster of our team. We would just feed him the matchups that were best as possible, and he would, with a very friendly smile and make sure his opponents still had fun, he would proceed to crush them into the ground the best he could. It's a little monstrous, and he was grinning like a madman the entire time.
Yeah.
But
Teams is a whole different
it
thing.
is.
I
The
need to
best
try
part,
it.
we had one of our buddies. He's got a. Do you mind if I plug someone else for this quickly?
No,
Space
go
Burn
ahead.
Steve, who's
Okay.
funny enough is also on Play on Tabletop,
Yep.
and has his own little channel, Hyperspace Mateys. But he went into this expecting to give like middling scores and just jump on grenades for us. And there were several games where our captain thought he would do better and ended up getting tabled really badly. And Steve came in and was an absolute champion and was able to win us the round by doing magnitudes better than what he thought he would. So
That's awesome,
so
man.
it's always
I
moments like that
yeah,
that make teams good.
I really love that teams is able to do that kind of thing, and like it really you can bring those skew lists if you want, like just bring your Chaos Knights guys, just some weird list, and it's like, oh yeah, no, like in this format that can work. Yeah,
How would you like to see an Anvil Siege Force list work?
isn't that's supposed to be
Imp,
the imp fist
yep,
detachment where like if you
yep,
don't move you get bonuses, but this is a game about movement.
yep. And
Okay.
he's playing it as Imperial Fist, and he went 4-1 recently against some pretty good players. So yeah,
He went 4-1.
yep,
Holy shit. Okay. Cool.
yeah.
um Damned Legion is in chat. Lamenting that I haven't done any Grey Knights or sorry, the opposite of that. Any Death Watch content lately, and yeah, man, it's hard to be Death Watch right now. Um I see my models, I see all the ones I have built and not painted. And then I don't know, I look at my Grey Knights and I want to play them. It's rough. I did play into a private game. I actually just played last week into with my Grey Knights. I played into Deathwatch, and they did pretty well actually. He played a Vanguard Spearhead detachment with a bunch of kill teams, which worked surprisingly well. And infiltrators and a Gladiator Reaper. So that's where I bought I painted that brand new Land Raider Redeemer for my Grey Knights, stuck it on the table. It got to fire Overwatch once because I went second. And he had infiltrated in a kill team and then moved it up and charged me. I'm like, okay, we'll prepare to be Overwatch. And then the Gladiator Lancer fired at it, hit both times, wounded both times. I failed both saves, and it did max damage for 18 18 damage, and it went up in flames. So brand new model, and
Gotta
it
happen.
holds true. It holds true. So Deathwatch is out there. There's still some jank. You're never gonna go 4-1 at a GT with him. I mean, maybe not never, but you know what I mean. Like, it's gonna be an uphill battle versus
It's a
if you
climb.
can bring Dark Angel's Iron Storm. You know, like it's like guaranteed a 4-1 almost.
Well, just won our local 40-man GT, went 5-0. So yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I lament my Deathwatch. I still tell people who want to get into the game, if they're primarily hobbyists, that chapter is going to give you way more hobby, like, rope to hang yourself with, to hang your wallet with, because
The aesthetic of the black armor with like the full silver left arm is very
Mm.
satisfying to paint as well. I've painted a
Yeah.
small handful of Deathwatch, and
yeah, and like I've got Tau railguns on my Eliminators, and I got Necron shields for some of my Terminators, and it's a hobbyist dream, man. It's an
and then you
awesome
have
army if you want to paint first.
each of the chapters you can customize per model.
Yep, it's fantastic. In other news, I signed up for my first RTT, my first tournament since my daughter was born. She's just about 8 months old now, so I'm a little rusty. We'll see if I can do 3 games in one day again, or if I just want to chug a bottle of ibuprofen and go to sleep. But that's next weekend. I'm excited.
If you're having an intense migraine, let's suggest the lighting here a little bit. If you have an intense migraine and are just sore and tired after your first, is it a 2-day event or 1 day?
It's 1 day, 3 games.
Okay. If
So it's
halfway
like
through
half
the day
of a GT.
you're suffering, one of my buddies on our team, Jordan, he recommended this one time. Don't take it as official medical advice, but just take just average dose for 1 Advil and 1 um, Tylenol.
Okay.
It helps a little bit. Anyways,
No,
there's a lot of little things you can do to help.
I'm a
ease
pretty
yourself.
active guy. I wear comfy shoes. I have snacks on me, and I drink lots of water. So usually I'm okay through a 1 game, but it's been 8 months, so we will see. But good advice. Well, I don't know about good advice. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to tell anybody to
don't
mix
take it
medications.
yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
just be careful when you go into events with Grey Knights. The usual. You can get that psychic backlash from overthinking. So,
Yeah.
Don't suffer
The
perils of the
movement
war.
phase, craziest phase.
Oh my god. Wet Coast was.
And end of opponent's turn phase.
Oh my god. You should sit down, but it's hard to sit down when you play Grey Knights because you're usually standing watching what's happening.
Yeah.
So.
I'm excited. It's been a long time. I've been playing actually way more GarageHammer than I ever have, but I haven't been going to events, so I'm excited to go to an event.
Well, I wish you luck, and I hope your Land Raider gets to do some work this time.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the list I'm probably gonna bring. With that said, though, I think we should get into the meat and potatoes of this. So again, Daniel and I were just brainstorming a bunch of stuff. We put together 3 detachments that we think might be cool if they ended up in a codex. We think they are thematic and interesting. That they're at least one of them semi-competitive. 2 of them I think are very competitive. But we'll get into that more. I think I'll pop over to the slideshow now. With that said, you'll see across the top, there's a big red disclaimer. This is not a rumor video. This is not a leak video. We don't know shit. We don't work for Games Workshop. We don't have an aunt that works for Games Workshop. We don't have any of that. So this is just 2 nerds having fun, talking about the things that they love. Here's my little context video or slide where I explain that again. I'm going to turn off the little warning now. And if people get weird about it later, I can always pop it back up there. Anyway, I just wanted to quickly say, we don't know anything. This is 2 nerds talking about the game, being nerdy. All right, so getting into this, we're on the assumption slide now. So the first thing is obviously the army rule teleport strike will not change. We haven't seen anything change army rule wise with any of the released codexes, right? Or am I?
Gene Stealer Cults is the only one I know of that's had a tweak, and then Space Marines. Now, Gene Stealer was
Uh
a balance.
yeah,
Space Marines was on Codex.
yeah, but those were, I mean, those were tweaks. Like, so Space
Yeah.
Marines, they lost reroll wounds for Oath, and it became all hits.
Yep.
But generally speaking, like their army rule didn't drastically change. Like it didn't become something else, right?
The identity remained the same. Correct.
Right. So we're assuming that, hey, Jose, what's up, dude? So we're assuming in these detachments that the teleport strike army rule as it exists right now, the uppy downy rule, will not change. So just keep that in mind when you're reading our like made up rules here. The other thing is true silver armor will appear in all detachments, and to be honest with you guys, most of that was because we didn't want the cognitive load of having to come up with all of those stratagems. That, at least for me. Also, it's a good stratagem. So, and then do you want to take the next three?
Yep. So this is also the assumption that we're not going to go over under any major datasheet changes. A lot of the units will roughly be the same rules or same loadouts of what they currently have. To try and come up with the thought of what rules units could have that could change, and then also have the new detachments. There's a lot of things that it gets to the point of speculation, and then beyond that just goes to, I don't want to say wish listing,
Yeah.
but there's the point of moderation with the speculation. So
I mean, we could always do a video where we talk about data sheet changes that we'd like, but that would also be in its own vacuum where these other things didn't exist, right? So
yeah,
you have to take each slice of the pie as it comes.
yeah. The next point as well is that we're just assuming that no points will change. So this is along the same lines as before. It's hard to say what can change with what we've seen for the recent performance. It could be Grey Knights going up in points. It could be them touching Land Raider Redeemers. It could be Librarians. It could be Power Armor. Grey Knights going down. Again, it's hard to guess where Games
Yeah.
Workshop is going to go with that. So I'll have to wait and see what happens for that. And for the last point, other than a couple of armies, we're just going to go into the assumption that Teleport Strike Force will remain pretty much unchanged.
Mhm.
There's a chance that one or two things may be taken out of it for one of the other detachments, but by and large, it's probably going to be pretty similar to before, which isn't a bad thing.
So the point of us saying that is that it's like we're not gonna pull from teleport strike force for
Yeah.
any of this stuff. All right, and then moving on. So we have 4 total, including teleport strike force. So this first one we created. Again, we created these. Masters of the Warp. That is a offensive oriented melee detachment. And then the Resplendent Aegis, that's going to be a defensive oriented make dreadnoughts great again. So more of a preserver kind of flavor from 9th. And then number 4 was Daniel's baby, which was.
It was Empyric Dominion. I kind of like the idea of seeing Necrons take from, they have their own hypercrypts, or some other factions kind of taking some concepts from other armies. I sort of like the idea of a Dark Pact sort of idea of units having to do leadership tests for benefits, or if they fail, they take damage. So something kind of spun around that kind of seemed like an interesting concept that could be fun.
Yeah. So we'll just dive straight in.
Let's go.
So Masters of the Warp. This is kind of the one I think that started the whole cavalcade or the landslide.
Yes.
So the theme here is that I like the Deathwatch mission tactics from 10th. And then I wanted to see a detachment with tides. Like, what might that look like? And tides are from 8th and 9th, as you all probably remember. I think we got it 1st and Psychic Awakening in 8th. It's what dug us out of the abysmal grave that we were in eighth. I wanted to see what that might look like with some 10th edition spin, and then I kind of wanted to make a detachment that kind of focused on making Grandmasters on foot and Brotherhood captains really good. So the detachment rule in this one would be tides. So similarly to how doctrines work for Space Marines or mission tactics work for Death Watch, at the start of your command phase, you'll pick a tide, and your whole army is in that tide until the start of your next command phase. Each tide can only be used once, and of course, you have to have those caveats where it only affects Grey Knight models. Remember, we're two nerds who put this together. The wording's probably wrong. There's probably easy ways to find loopholes in this stuff. We're not rules writers. And then for giggles, I just said storm bolters equipped by infantry should have pistol because that's funny. I
wish that was a data sheet thing, please.
Yeah, I know, but still, I think it's. I mean, like, it's on our wrists for fuck's sake, right? Like, I'm gonna stab you with this hand and then jab you like in the gut here, and then fire my 50 caliber explosive tip rocket into your guts. All right. Anyway, so the first tide is Tide of Convergence, and bear with me. This is one of the bigger detachments for like content wise. So the idea was each tide will either give like a movement bonus or it'll give a ranged and a melee bonus. And I wanted to give little bonuses that were impactful. And again, you can only use these once per game, except for one caveat, which we will also get to. So psychic range weapons will gain sustained hits 1. If they already had sustained hits 1, they'll instead gain sustained hits 2. So your silencers will now be sustained hits 2 just naturally. If you have a brother captain in your unit, they give sustained hits 1, so now every psychic ranged weapon has sustained hits 2. You see what I mean? And then psychic melee weapons gain anti-vehicle and anti-monster 4+. Just a nice solid bonus. Again, usable once per game. Tide of Shadows. The Grey Knight army will gain the benefit of cover at all times, even if you're standing out in the open, and specifically -1 to be hit in melee. In that, yeah, it's not benefit and stealth, it's melee specifically. Celerity, so you will ignore any modifiers to advancing or moving or charging, and then if you attempt to fall back from a Grey Knight unit in this tide, you must make a leadership check. If you fail, you cannot fall back. And then Tide of Escalation is just, again, really nice. Just melee weapons get lance, psychic range weapons get lethal hits. So you could potentially have a paladin unit with psi cannons led by a brother captain with sustained hits 1 and lethal hits. And remember, we don't have any native rerolls really, so I don't think piling on special keywords for Grey Knights is all that dangerous. It's when you can reroll all your hits and all that stuff that things get really wild.
And the critical hits on 5s. That's been also
yes, and all that stuff. And I don't think any of that is in any of these, right?
I don't think we've given any crit hits on anything here from what we made. So
I'll let you go through the stratagems if you want, Daniel.
Sounds good. So, of course, is the first one that we always know, True Silver Armor.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we can probably just move past that one a little bit because that's the classic what we're familiar with from our current one. It's the Armor of Contempt stratagem.
Yeah. There is one difference though in this one versus the normal one.
Oh yes, you have the exception for this one for Tide of Shadows,
right?
Where you can choose to have essentially stealth without it technically being stealth,
right?
Instead of the reduced HP.
And stealth has a 12-inch minimum.
It not always.
Oh, okay. I thought stealth just had the 12 inches like baked in, so that's why I wrote it this way. If that's wrong, that's okay. like I said, we're not rules writers. We're not perfect. But the idea is that shadows makes you more tanky, harder to hit, right? So you're always in cover. But then if you choose to, you can spend 1 CP, and now instead of -1 AP, now you're just -1 to be hit on top of it.
Yeah.
And then moving on.
Then we have Title Mastery. So, command phase, you pick one unit, one Grey Knight unit in your army, and you can select one of the tides, and it's sort of the not squad tactics. I believe the Gladius detachment has something similar. Pick one of the tides for that unit to benefit from one command phase to the next. And it's only just that one unit that'll benefit from that tide. Usually, even if you've already used that tide.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
this was put in there specifically. You could use a tide that's already been used, but you can only have one tide active per unit. So your whole army is in shadows, and you could put one into convergence, for instance, but not convergence and shadows.
yes.
Right. All right. Moving on.
Then we have deadly efficacy. Efficacy. Sorry about that.
You got
One
it. You
fight
got it.
phase before unit selected fight. Great. That unit will get +1 attack for all the melee weapons, and then if you're in Tide of Escalation, critical wounds will do a mortal wound in addition, up to a maximum of 6 additional mortal wounds every time the unit fights.
So this might sound familiar. This is straight up the Rapier's detachment. Well, Rapiers gave their strat gave +1 attack, and then you could have the Tide of Convergence melee bonus. But anyway, it's both of those at once. And Damn Legion, yes, as I said right before we started talking about this detachment, the Deathwatch mission tactics from 10th were very much a huge driver, yeah, inspiration. So I did already cap this though, unlike what Games Workshop did at the start of 9th, where they did not cap how many mortal wounds this could do, and you could do something like 18 with some falchion. Anyway, it was dumb. I already thought ahead there.
I had a strike squad kill a whole Questor's knight. That hurt.
Yeah, I had a 10-man of interceptors one shot a brass scorpion.
Oh, wow.
With the chaplain buff.
Oh,
and all that actually went
gone.
off. It was dumb. It was crazy.
Wow.
It's funny. It's not good game design. It is funny though.
It's funny once.
It's funny once. Yes. All right. Next one.
Next, we have Title Extraction. So it's a bit of a twist from what we're used to with our Index Detachment. So it's end of your opponent's turn. It's 2 CP. You pick one of your Grey Knight units that are within engagement range of an enemy unit, so they have to be up close and already fighting. And you can basically take that unit and pull them out into teleport assault, if you will. And then if you are in Tide of Celerity, this only costs 1 CP. This one's kind of interesting. I like the concept you had for this. It's sort of a reverse mists.
Yeah.
Because in order to pull the unit out, you have to already be in combat, or it's sort of a way of getting around the usual restrictions, just at a hefty cost of 2 CP.
Exactly. Well, the idea here was like, I've had opponents who've played me like a second time ask, "Hey, can you pull out of combat?" And I'm like, "I cannot." And I've explained that, but it's a complicated game, but like I cannot. And they're like, and the light bulb will go off, and that's how like Captain Stern got charged by 10 grots, and then spent 2 turns killing all the grots because he got stuck, right? So this would allow you for a hefty cost to actually be like, nope, for 1 unit, or if you didn't want to get tar pitted, you can now decide to not be tar pitted. I almost actually made this one a once per game as well, because it's potentially a very strong mechanic to get around one of the weaknesses of the teleport assault.
Yes, especially there are some pivotal moments where a unit you need to get out and reposition can do that for like an objective.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and then we have 2 more, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the next one I believe we have here is Wrath of Titan. It's 1 CP. A unit can either, I believe you had it set up for fallback in charge or advance in charge. And then
Correct.
if you're tied of convergence, you can also shoot in the shooting phase if you followed back or advanced.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah. So just a little like who doesn't want advance in charge, and then it gives you shoot and charge if you're or advance and shoot and charge if you are in a specific tide. So you can kind of see what I'm setting up here. You look at the board state and you're like, all right, I need to pull that unit on my opponent's turn, and then my next turn I'm gonna have it like come back down, and I'm gonna use smoke effectively on it, and then the other unit's gonna like advance and shoot and charge, so they need to be in convergence, right? So you've got like there's another layer of that onion of all those decisions, right? So
yeah,
I think it's fun.
I think it's a pretty cool idea. In comparison to what we currently have for Teleport Assault, this one definitely has a lot more aggressive rather than evasive options.
Yes.
So I do like the concept so far.
Yeah.
And then the last one we have is One Last Blade Forged Defiance,
Yes.
1 CP. It's a 1 CP fight on death. You use it before, just after any unit selects targets. Every time one of your models in your unit dies, you roll a dice on a 3-up. The model fights on death. So it's a 3+ fight on death.
It's pretty standard. A lot of the fight on death is like 4+.
Yep.
I made it 3+ because our models are just so expensive.
Yep.
I could see this being a 4+, but I made it 3+ just because, like, yeah, when you're, your Death Company 28-point model doesn't swing, that feels bad, but not as bad as your 42-point paladin or your 45-point like paladin not swing.
Yeah, those guys.
So I thought let's do it on a 3-up. And this is kind of like fight on death is kind of like a fights first. It makes your opponent really think, because like they might not trade up.
It's a better version of fights first, in my opinion.
Oh, it's better. Okay.
With fights first, you could have it where your opponent goes in, you swing first, and none of your stuff dies, and they just lose a unit. This way, it's at least a trade. They can kill something. They might lose their unit, but they've exchanged it for something.
Right.
It's a lot better than like isn't it start of 10th edition Custodes, where if you were a melee army, they would just
God, you like triggered my PTSD, man.
I know. I'm sorry, I'm getting flashbacks, but yeah, it's a lot better than that, in my opinion. Fights first is a dangerous keyword.
You mean better as in from a game design perspective?
Yeah,
I thought you meant better from a competitive perspective.
It's healthier.
Okay, I got you. Yeah. It does feel better to charge and still kill something than to just get killed. That is true.
This is also better in a way where you can charge a fights first unit and still get to swing into them very likely.
That's true. Yep.
So that is a nice thing with fight on death.
All right, and then we're gonna go into enhancements. I'll take it away here, and then you can do the intro on the next one, which I think people will be very excited about, because I know you were when I was like, what do you think about? And you're like, that's amazing. Anyway, the first one is Divination. That's also familiar from 9th. And it's a Grey Knight model, 30 points, kind of expensive. While the bearer is on the battlefield, and I did that on purpose, at the start of your command phase, you just gain a CP. So I was thinking about ways to balance this. And I was like, well, you could make it a roll. But then I'm like, no, we're an army that wants to always be moving. So what if we make it, you can't be moving effectively in the way that you want to get your CP. There's ways around this. You could always get a Tech Marine that just hangs out on your backfield and never does teleport assault, and now he's a 100-point CP farm. That's not a bad, like, if you want to tech that way, do it. I don't think it's a great idea, but you do you, boo. So one of the things I dislike about playing 9th edition Grey Knights is that I always feel like I am just struggling for CP. I can't tell you the last time my CP rerolled. It's almost never unless it's a Drago charge.
Trap. It's a
Right.
trap. It's a
Right,
trap.
yeah. It's an absolute trap anyway, but like it's real bad for Grey Knights right now, and I figure that let's just give a little help. This will give you probably 2 to 3 CP a game, even if you're using that unit offensively. And for 30 points, I think that's a steal. The next one is the Orb of Indignation, 25 points, Grey Knight model, and the bearer can reroll advances and charges. That's always solid. It's also 25 points. That's not cheap. But like, if you really want to build your army around like that one unit, like Drago's unit is always going to get stuck in, and then you need one to also get stuck in. This is probably the enhancement for you. And then I have the I looked up how to actually pronounce this, and I already forgot.
Is it Lavalier?
Lavalier, that's it, of Malcador. 35 points, so very expensive. But once per game, during the reinforcement step, one unit that is off the board because of the teleport strike rule can be set up wholly within 6 inches of the bearer of this unit and no closer than 6 inches away from enemy models. Also, did all of that. That reads like garbage, by the way. The idea is you're kind of like a rapid ingress on your turn, sort of.
It's equivalent of demons where they're 6-inch deep strike and still being able to charge, except it's for a single unit for Grey Knights for once per game for that 6-inch deep strike, essentially.
Right. And then the Empyric Dictum, 15 points. You get to reroll hits of 1. It's cheap. It's effective. And we'll get into the list here where I actually use a lot of these things. Why don't you explain the list, Daniel, and then you say what the list is, and then I'll explain the list, like technically.
Okay. So we got 2 brother captains, one with your Empyric Dictum and one with Divination. We've got a librarian with the Lavalier of Malcador. We've got you have a GMTK with Orb of Indignation. Now, I will poke you about this. I believe technically you can only have 3 enhancements in your army at a time.
Oh, really? I thought it was okay. All right,
Could be wrong.
That never happens in the real game, but yeah.
We've got a 10-man unit of Terminators with side cannons, a 10-man Paladin unit with side cannons, a 5-man strike squad, and 2 Dread Knights.
Yeah. So the idea was I wanted a world where you could have a 10-man Paladin brick led by a brother captain, hitting on 2s naturally, re-rolling 1s to hit, sustained hits 2 on 6s to wound. I just thought that would be neat. But the wombo combo of this specific list is that you have a Libby on its own with the Lavalier, or however you pronounce it. I'm sorry. He comes down in your opponent's backfield in like the corner, and then calls that Paladin unit to him. Or in this specific list, that Grandmaster Dread Knight is now a 6-inch charge with a reroll to charge.
Oh, that's actually kind of spicy.
So you land with a Libby, who's 155 points now, by the way. You then call in your 230 point Grandmaster Dread Knight buddy, who then has a 6-inch rerollable charge into whatever you need to die. You can only do that once a game. You're probably throwing away the Libby and the Dread Knight, but like you're killing something. I think that's funny.
But yeah, that would actually be kind of cool.
It's a lot. It's not. I don't think it's a good like tactic. It is interesting.
I do think the idea of opening up this 6-inch deep strike, even on a limited scale, it's still kind of an enjoyable spot for what you could use it for forcing your opponent into certain decision making, whether they want to screen or where they want to leave open, as well as what you move. There's a lot of options for that. I feel like, um, just whether or not how you would position the Lavalier and how you'd want to try and get that set up and ready.
I mean, honestly, if you want to do this right, you take a Drago Terminator brick because they get a 6 and you save your CP for that reroll, right?
Yep.
And then you put the Lavier on like a Paladin unit or a Terminator unit, or on some other like a strike, well, not a strike squad, but you know, some other small unit. And then you bring in that Paladin brick that, you know, when you really need to like gum up the mid board or charge, like, you know, move block them in their deployment zone. I don't know. You got some options for the play because 10-man bricks are huge, especially Terminators. And then Drago's already giving you a 6-inch, even at 9 inches. And then you get a 6 from this once a game. That's pretty spicy. So I think that's probably the right way to play it. But I loved the idea of a librarian coming down, bringing in his buddy, then brain bursting something. And then here comes the Grandmaster Dread Knight, like barreling at
Just
you.
out of the warp.
Yeah. Yeah, out of the warp. So
Just coming in with a steel chair.
exactly. Wow. So that's the Masters of the Warp detachment. It's really aggressive. You've only got 2 defensive strats really, and one is, oh, I'm already in combat and I don't want to be in combat anymore. And the other one is just, I guess you have the Tide, makes you a little tankier. But there's no feel no pains in this list. There's no, like, you're trading any of that stuff for maximum violence.
Yes, it is also a bit more susceptible to shooting than our usual index detachment. It's good because cover can really help in some matchups, but there are some armies that will just look and go, I ignore cover. And then you got to try and work around that. So
Yeah.
there's still counterplay and options for that, but it is a more aggressive focus, which is going to be a fun change of pace.
To answer Damned Legion's question, why don't GKs have Librarian Dreadnoughts, or do they? So they're all Librarian Dreadnoughts, kind of, in the lore. They're all Psychers that are jammed into the box, but they don't have, like, they're not a Librarian, like, of the Librarium or whatever. I wish we did, like, I wish we had some more Dreadnought options, but
I agree.
our only Dreadnought option right now in 10th is the Venerable Dreadnought, which, excellent transition, Damned Legion. Thank you very much for being here to help out. We now have the Resplendent Aegis detachment. And very succinctly, the whole point of this is to make Dreadnoughts great again. That's it. So I pitched this idea to Daniel, and he was like, oh my god, that's amazing. So I'll let Daniel take it away with the detachment rule.
So, to start off, quite simply, all Grey Knight units gain a 6 of Philippine, which is very good. But my favorite part of this is that it turns Venerable Dreadnoughts to have the Deep Strike keyword and the Leader ability so that they can lead units. And this detachment makes it so that they can lead Terminators or Paladins. The Dreadnought can move through walls as if it were infantry. And then while the entire bodyguard is there, I believe you have worded where it doesn't count as a vehicle.
It's worded poorly.
Yeah.
But so that's there's a problem with attaching vehicles to infantry units. This was attempting to get around that. This is probably not a very good way of doing that, but the point is, anyway.
For me, this would be like having Gazgul with Meganobs, but it's a Venerable Dreadnought with Terminators. You have a Dreadnought with Tactical Dreadnought armor.
Right. I think that would be incredible, right?
That'd be badass.
Yeah. So now our 155-point Vendreads have a reason to exist. Not only are they giving their auras of rerolls, which they're still giving to other units, like that's still on the model, right? They're giving it to their unit, obviously. They're giving it to every other unit within 6 inches. It also stops them from immediately being shot off the board, because they're now a leader.
And there are downsides to this. So
There are
first of all, you don't use the Venerable Dreadnought's toughness, so they'll be counted as toughness 5 still.
That's true.
They're only 8 wounds, I believe, maybe 9, which is only like 1 or 2 more than a Grandmaster. They have 3 damage attacks, but there's only 5 of them, I believe, and I think they hit on 3s, if I remember correctly.
Yes, they are
Um,
hitting on 3s with everything, for
yeah.
some reason. Because in 8th or in 9th, Dreads hit on 3 and Vendreads hit on 2s, but our Dreadnoughts went away and we only kept the Vendreads, but they went down to kind of like our Grandmaster Dreadnought or Dread Knight also hits on 3s now.
They are 8 wounds. Oh, and they
Yes.
don't have they don't have an invulnerable save.
They don't have an invul, which is one of the reasons that you see them just get shot off the board immediately in 10th.
Yep.
They're T9, 8 wounds.
Yep. Save.
Yeah. They move way faster than the Terminator unit usually too. So they're going to be drugged down by the Terminator's movement speed.
From 6 inches to 5.
Oh, okay. Wow, really? I thought they moved at least 8 or something.
They only go 6. They
Okay.
only go 6.
I guess that's those ancient servos or something.
They're tired.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, Damn immediately says that seems OP to me. I mean, maybe they're expensive. I think it's fun. This is this is the mostly thematic detachment I was talking about. I don't think this one would go win a whole bunch of GTs, but it is cool.
If you want a Dreadnought with 10 Terminators, you're looking at almost 600 points.
Yeah, it's 575 points. So
Assuming
you're
it's
not
regular
bringing
Terminators.
more than 2 of those.
No. No.
You just don't have the points. Not if you want to score anything, anyway. Anyway, there is one more part of the army rule.
Yep, and that was just to make it so that I mean, it'd be the same as just giving Venerable Dreadnoughts a 5 up leadership.
Yeah,
which would be interesting. I don't know. It would, I guess, really depend on how this detachment would end up doing overall. But thematically, it's very cool.
In my mind, right, the Grey Knights in lore, they don't bring out the Dreadnoughts unless like shit's really bad. In fact, they don't even want to be entombed in a Dreadnought. So to make use of these ancient warriors who've been alive for thousands of years and seen countless battles probably pushes them a little harder. So I wanted to show that by having their leadership be 5 now. I could take it or leave it, honestly. I just thought it was neat. All right, and the stratagems. So True Silver, this is your bog standard True Silver. There's no addition to this one. Kind of like we said, this will be in all of our detachments. You want to take this one, Daniel, and then and then we'll just alternate.
Yes, this is one you would come up with as an option. So it's opponent shooting phase or fight phase, and you get to pick one of your units that's selected as a target of attack. Until the end of phase, you get to reroll invulnerable save rolls of 1. So just invulnerable saves, not armor saves. But if the unit is led by a Venerable Dreadnought, you can choose to also increase your Feel No Pain from a 6 up to a 5 up. But if you do, it costs 2 command points instead of 1.
Right.
So this one definitely cranks up on the durability.
Yeah.
The good thing that there's a clause for the 2 CP, because 5 up Feel No Pain on 3 wound models can get nuts, but for a 2 CP strat, that can be a lot to invest.
5 up Feel No Pain on 3 up models, re-rolling 1 up invul saves.
Yes.
I mean, it's
not as bad as Wardens.
No, it's still not as bad as Wardens, no. But you see it, like, it's good. It's expensive, and that's okay. But I also wanted to, like, one of the things that pisses me off about Haloed in Soulfire in our current index is, like, that's a 2 CP proactive don't shoot me, where I feel like it should be 2 CP reactive and 1 CP proactive, right? Like, there should be that option where it's like you're out of position, you have some extra CP, the Forge Fiends look at your Terminator blob, and you're like, you know what? Whoopsies.
I don't
Yeah.
want that.
But that can't happen unless you declare it in your movement phase in the current index. So one of the things you'll see is that Daniel and I designed a lot of these stratagems where there's an option, a way to crank it up or crank it down. So Damned Legion, those are great questions. We were almost done writing these up when I realized we didn't add war gear stratagems, battle tactics, anything like that. We didn't do that.
As an argument, we don't know what to label each of these as, and I don't think GW knows how to label the stratagems half the time.
That's
So
true.
who knows?
That's fair. For instance, so armored of contempt, like the literal armor of contempt, that is a battle tactic for Space Marines.
Correct.
For Grey Knights, it's a war gear stratagem.
Yep.
And for Votan, it's also war gear.
Yep.
The rules are the same. They're named something different. So like it's void armor or it's true silver armor, but the effect is the same. But one of those can be vected and the other ones can't. And I don't understand.
Feel like the only reason each of them has the title that they do is purely what's most thematic. So True Silver Armor and the Void Armor for Votan are like, oh, this is their war gear. This is what they wear. This is what they have all the time.
Right.
Meanwhile, Armor of Contempt is like a battle tactic. It's a choice with how they operate or something along that line. Or you get the epic deeds, something great heroes would do, and then the rules don't always line up with the narrative.
Yeah,
So.
I don't know. It's weird. So what's a strategic ploy? What's a battle tactic? What's a war gear? I don't know. Honestly, except the ones that are battle tactics in my index, I don't know what the other ones are anyway. Unless it's, oh, I'm gonna vect your true silver. And it's like, sorry, man, you can't. It's a war gear strat. Like that's the only one I know other than Death from the Warp is a battle tactic. CP reroll is a battle tactic. Which I think that's hilarious. You can vect that, huh?
Go to ground.
Go to ground is a battle tactic. Not that you ever use that in Grey Knight Army, unless your power armor is getting hit with a railgun or something.
There are times when I've had to pull out 2 CP to make sure my Terminators have a 3-up save or better against some weapons. It's useful. Don't underestimate it.
Oh, you gain cover. That's right.
Yes.
I forgot it's not just a 6-up invul. I got you. Yep. Anyway, so that's a great question, and we didn't think about it until it was way too late. Because honestly, like, we all know the battle tactic vect and free CP thing was a bad band-aid fix that they stuck in when the game was released, because they realized how incredibly powerful shield captains and Space Marine captains and stuff were when you can take 6 to 9 in a list if you want. Just take, you grab the one in Terminator armor and the one in Gravis armor and the the normal one, and then you have 9 captains. Like, yeah, a lot of free CP. Yeah. So anyway, I digress. So this is a way to crank up your durability if you want. It's expensive, and that's okay. All right, and I was up for the next one. Emperor's Will made manifest. So 1 CP, the shooting or fight phases done on purpose, so it can be yours or the other person's turn. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, you can improve the armor pen of that attack by 1. If it's led by a Vendread, when a critical wound is scored, those are now AP2. So on 6s to wound, you're gonna have AP2. All your other weapons are gonna have AP1. This is everything. So you could potentially have your Nemesis Force weapons critting, and doing AP -4. You're not going to have very many of those because we don't have any wound rerolls. I guess the Vendread unit's going to be rerolling 1 to wound, but you know what I mean. Like, there's no fishing for crits. There's no crits of 5 in this. So I think it's
Yeah.
good. It makes Stormbolters actually kind of scary if you're not in cover. Um,
I mean, they're still strength 4, so I will take anything that makes them feel like I'm not just
yeah.
rain.
Our shooting isn't great, so I didn't think that adding, except on the Dread Knights, so I didn't think that adding more AP was very terrible. Um,
At most, I feel like they would just take the infantry side cannons and bump them from not as nice
yeah,
to, hey, these are actually respectable.
yeah. I mean, AP2 with the strat up, AP3 on your crit wounds, like that's pretty good actually at strength 8, 2 damage, right? So,
Yep.
anyway, next is you, Daniel.
So next we have repositioning feint. I believe is the next one we have here. Yep.
That's correct.
So in your movement phase, after unit has in your army has fallen back, and until the end of the turn, that unit can shoot even though they've fallen back. And if they are being led by a venerable dreadnought, they can also charge if they've fallen back. Um, so that one's a kind of fun little reward for focusing more on the Ven Dread leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Having a fallback and shoot or be eligible to shoot is a fun option for a variety of reasons. It's not
Scoring
something we
actions.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it's not something we really have at the moment. A lot of times when we get stuck in combat, we're just kind of stuck there until we grind it out, or
Mm-hmm.
librarians can free us from this
Yeah.
prison.
Yes.
Um,
And round 6 happens. I mean,
oh, I wish sometimes, but
yeah.
but yeah, this one's a nice. Will be a little bit of breath of fresh air for Grey Knights, having some fallback and do stuff options.
Kippy, what's up, man? How's your recovery, dude? Uh, Next one is Eternal Vengeance. So this one's cool. When a friendly Grey Knight's Vendread unit is destroyed, you target the enemy that destroyed it. You spend 1 CP, and for the rest of the battle, each time any friendly Grey Knight's model from your army makes an attack against that target, you get to reroll the hit roll. So this is kind of leaning into some rerolls to hit. I don't, but you have to have already lost a 600 point unit before you get to do this. So I think that's okay. You still have to spend a CP to do it.
It's
Um,
thematic. It's fluffy. It's cool. It's like Tau losing their ethereals. I think they had stratagems in the past or rules or abilities to get rerolls against whoever killed their ethereal. So
yeah.
seems pretty fitting to me.
And Ken's here now. Man, Kip is here. Ken's here. We just need like Sindri, and we got like the whole gang, man. So yeah, it's fun. It's thematic. It's cool. And then the last one, sir.
So the last one we have is Indomitable Might for 2 command points, and it's in your shooting phase or the fight phase. You pick one of your grenades units, and whoops, bumped up here. When this unit is selected to make its attacks, you can ignore any or all modifiers to the characteristics of this models in the unit, to any roll or test made from models in that unit. And then if the selected unit is being led by a Venerable Dreadnought, add 1 to the hit roll or add 1 to the wound roll. So I'm assuming this was meant where you pick one of the 2 options for that.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
you pick. So usually you're gonna pick 1 to wound, but if you're at -1 to hit or something, you might be able to force through some extra hits that way. If you yeah. This is and so this is the Grandmaster on foot ability straight up stolen for any unit in this detachment for 2 CP. But if you need to grind through two Catan or something, this can help you do that because you're ignoring their minus or their half like damage and stuff. But it's good. And Ken, you came in about halfway through. You're actually doing good, man. Like, 50% if you round up.
Only halfway through the second of the 3, so
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
so you're good. Now that we have some folks rolling in here again, I'd like to remind everybody these are made up detachments. These are not leaks. These are not rumors. Daniel and I made these up because we're giant nerds and think about Grey Knights too much.
We are just theory crafting.
Yes, this is all jokes.
All right. So
All right,
next,
the
I believe,
enhancements.
yes.
All right, so this gets cool. We have, I think, 2 out of the 4 are
Three.
dreadnought specific. Oh, 3 out of the
Three.
4.
Yep.
Perfect. See, I mean, you want to bring your dreadnoughts as your leaders anyway, so that works out. Um, so we'll just alternate, Daniel.
Sounds good.
Okay, so
Do
I'll
you want
go
me to start it?
first. Oh,
Sounds good.
okay. So charged locomotors. This is 20 points, which this is one of my favorites. Grey Knight Venerable Dreadnought model only. When the bearer's unit is selected to fight, increase pile-in and consolidate movement by 3 inches up to a total of 6. I know that doesn't sound interesting, and neither does the teleport assault force or strike forces movement shenanigans. Doesn't sound great either. This is amazing.
So it's something I don't, especially with the way the rules set up for piles and consolidators are set up for 10th edition. It's something I don't feel like people quite appreciate when it shows up. Having access to, there's nothing wrong with giant nerds loving Grey Knights. It's absolutely perfectly fine. But when it comes to piles and consolidates, having access to that 6-inch means that when you make that charge, if you just barely make it, more of that unit you have can get into combat. Or if you really make it, it lets you wrap around a unit even more or tag things that you might have not been able to tag before. And then once you kill that, if you kill the unit you're fighting in, by having a 6-inch consolidate, if the range of an objective is within 6 inches, you can go that way. If another enemy unit is within 7, so you can go within engagement range, you can tag them there. They can fight you back, but you're there. Um, it just opens up the choices you can make of where you can go and lets you have a lot more unexpected mobility by being aggressive and putting risk into the plays you make. But it's really cool.
The game winning move I made in my last game against Deathwatch with my Grey Knights is Drago got a 10-inch charge. I purposefully did not shoot the like I think they were just intercessors. Anyway, I left them there on purpose, charged into them, absolutely obliterated them with 10 Terminators and Drago, and then I was able to consolidate onto the middle objective, score my secondary, and score primary because it was the bottom of turn 5. So it was like a 15 point for a 3-inch. Like, so increasing that to 6 would have made it so that I could have done that with even more leeway, or I could have, tagged into other stuff. It's like, this is one of those things that is why you always saw the Primaris Chaplain on bikes in 9th. Like, every Space Marine melee focused list had one because it gave an aura of this.
Yep.
This, and when they added intent, they added, or you can consolidate towards the nearest objective if you can reach its control zone. That makes this even better. And especially with a big 10-man blob, because you got a big footprint.
10-man blob and a 60mm
Yeah,
base.
and a 60mm dreadnought leading it. Yeah, that's true. So we tried to add at least one movement shenanigan into every single one of these detachments. We wanted to keep that Grey Knight feel. This is one of the ways that this detachment does that. All right.
Because I don't believe any of the stratagems, other than the fallback and do stuff, we don't have any funky movement.
No.
So next enhancement is Steel Heart. So it's for any Grey Knights model. And once per round, when an attack is allocated to the bearer's unit, you can change the damage characteristic of that attack to 0. That one's pretty good. I know someone had commented before about possibly putting up a bit in points, quite possibly. Um, being able to choose to bump an attack when it's important to 0 can help.
And
But
Tommy's here too. Man, everyone's here. This is great. This is
whole
good.
gang.
Yeah.
There we go. But yeah, I could see some inspiration probably being taken from Ironstorm for this one, but it's more just the bearer's unit rather than a bubble, so it restricts the options.
So this one was all you, by the way.
Oh yes, because I remember we had to talk about that. We had an idea for something modifying damage. I think it was something about -1 damage, but I thought about
It might have been -1 damage. Yeah.
But then we ended up changing it to rather than a consistent modifier, just being for a single attack.
One of the other things too is we wanted to try to have like one cheap enhancement, one expensive one, and two kind of middling ones. And I think that at like having damage or -1, we're like, okay, that's like a 40 point.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's too expensive. I don't know. Anyway, so this one, the idea would be once per round. So, you know, it's multiple times throughout the game. You know, if you're hit by like a volcano cannon or something, you can just be like, I don't want to take that damage.
It is once per round, not per turn, which is a difference. I think Ironstorm is once per turn. I could be wrong with that. So you're limited to using it 5 times a game.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Which, I mean, we could increase the cost and make it per turn. Oh, whatever. Anyway, I think it's neat. It's an idea. There is one specific use that I think is very good, which we thought of days after we actually wrote this, which I think is great. But
Trying to remember the snare we had.
The solo Libby.
Oh God. Oh
So
yes.
somebody hits him with like the stray las cannon, and he's just like, I'm good. I don't want to take that.
Oh, so I'm gonna put 4 dark lances into him. All right. You hit with 3, all 3 wound. I pass 2 4-ups and 0.
Yeah, and I'm not taking. And it's like, great. Thanks for playing.
Yep.
Won't stop him from killing himself, but like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Brain.
Experience of Ages. So again, leaning into that, they're being led by dreadnoughts now. Like, you know, this one's expensive, for obvious reasons. But this is like them, like the other Grey Knights looking up towards this monstrously, you know, elite Grey Knight veteran. So it has to go on a dreadnought once per battle at the start of any fight phase, which is important. The bearer's unit gains fight first. So it's kind of like Sigil in a way, where it's a defensive, but it's fight phase only. It's once a game, just like Sigil. And when you tell them, like, if you charge them, I can fight first, that's gonna make your opponent have to make a bunch of different choices that maybe they didn't want to make.
Yep.
Or maybe they charge anyway, and then it says you can use it. You don't have to use it.
Yep.
So if you get like charged by a bunch of grots or something, you don't have to use it. But then when the Mega Nops come in, you can tar pit, I guess.
It can be baited out, and it can be worked around by having a unit charge another unit, then piling into this one.
That's true, yes.
But it forces that point where your opponent has to try and deal with it in some way. So it kind of creates a fun little game rather than just a permanent always has fights first buff. So that one is a lot nicer to use as a situational tool. And then
oh, Tommy, have you been drinking? Restrictions not. Oh, Custos and Admex, yeah.
Custos are cheap and replaceable because those things are good deals. Admech,
yeah.
You try to break those.
Very expensive little models.
You're gonna deal with a lawsuit with how expensive they're paying for those models at that point.
What did they say? I think the one kind of horde list that's semi-competitive for AdMech right now is like nearly $2,000 to buy the plastic.
If it's US, it's nearly 2,000. If it's Canadian, it's gonna be over 2,000.
And if it's Australian, it's just a fucking mortgage. Like,
yeah, don't.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to them.
Yeah. All right.
Last one.
The last one for the Resplendent Aegis detachment. Take it away.
Cybolt ammunition. So this is a fun little one. Again, it has to be on a vettable dreadnought, but the bearer's unit is treated as a vehicle for the purposes of shooting into engagement range, as per the rules of big guns never tire.
Mm-hmm.
This is a funky one because, I mean, sure, storm bolters, but also incinerators are kind of cool, being able to shoot the melee.
Yeah.
And also shooting out of melee is an option.
I mean, if you wanted to spend a bunch of CP, you could, you know, you could get
the extra AP.
You could get extra AP on on your incinerators even.
Yep.
Then use this. You know, you could have You could have -2 AP incinerators and heavy flamer, because the dreadnought has a heavy flamer on it.
Yep.
Firing into a melee, and then you still get to attack in the fight phase. I mean, I think it's fun.
I agree.
15 points is maybe a little cheap for that, but you also are now at very close to a 600 point total unit. And if it's paladins, you're over 600 points.
Already.
Yeah. Yeah. It's 605 before enhancement.
Yeah. So 620 with the enhancement,
Yeah.
or if it's regular Terminators, this would bump it up to 590.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, this would be a very expensive thing to do, but it'd be fun. And yes, it's expensive to buy anything in Australia from
Yeah.
Games Workshop.
Yes,
All
it
right.
is.
We'll go into the list. You want to read it out again?
Sure. So you've got 2 Venerable Dreadnoughts with plasma cannons and heavy flamers. One has Experience of Ages, and the other has Charged Locomotors. You have a Libby with Steelheart. You've got 2 10-man Terminator squads, a 5-man Strike squad, a 5-man Interceptor squad, and 2 Dread Knights.
Yep. So, obviously, I've burnt 1,200 points just in the Vendreads and the Terminators. And then with the experiences of Ages and the Locomotors, you are over that, I'm pretty sure. The Libby with Steelheart, again, this guy is an action monkey. He's dropping down, he's brain bursting, he's scoring you behind enemy lines or whatever. And then if they try to just use an obliterator to kill him, he can tank it and then zero out one attack. So it makes him more annoying. He's also like 155 points in this list, I think. So he's the same as bringing another Vendread in the Ventred detachment. So you could easily argue that that also isn't great, but it's fun. So, you're gonna. I mean, really, this is a 2-brick list style play, as it were. You're gonna be like in the middle, grinding up all those middle objectives. But now you'll have some plasma to help you out. This is one of the like 2 ways in the codex we can get plasma.
Yep.
Or the index. I think it's the Storm Raven and the Dreadnought, and I think that's it.
And Servitors.
Oh, right. My bad.
While they still exist.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's fun. It's expensive. I don't think this is great. The infiltrators are gonna, or the interceptors. Wow, the interceptors are gonna be scoring you points. They're fantastic. The Dread Knights are still a threat. The 5-man strike squad will hopefully be running around sticking everything as the rest of your army is killing everything on the board, or at least they're scoring you points in the backfield while you have a 5-up feel no pain and fights first and all this other shit. So I think it's fun. But Empyric Dominion.
Yes.
So we put this one together today.
Yes, we did. The concept
And
we've had for a while.
Yeah.
But we were crunched down the last details before we had the stream.
Right. It's good.
I think it has some funky options, and I think it forces a bit of a different change of pace for play.
Yeah. So the basic idea is if you wanted that army to feel like Psychers again, I think you're gonna like this one. So take it away, Daniel.
So it's using a similar mechanic to Dark Packs, so it's gonna be leadership tests for your units. We could probably jump over to the detachment rule for now.
Sure.
It's a little wordy.
It is.
Yes.
It's worth it.
Yes. So it's a bit of a paragraph. So the whole idea is that at the end of your movement phase, each of your sector units can do a Empyric Dominion roll. If it does, they pick a unit that's within 18 inches invisible to them. If the roll is successful, which is a leadership test, that unit is now considered marked, and you keep track of the amount of times the unit has been marked from one movement phase until your next movement phase, if you will. So when a unit has 1 mark, all attacks against that unit have +1 to hit. If they have 2 marks, all attacks against that unit have +1 to wounds. And then once you hit 3 marks, and then for every mark after that, you do D3 mortal wounds to the unit. So the whole idea is that you can have several units focusing on a single target, and as they all do the test, if they're successful, you can get extra benefits. But if they fail, they can end up taking some damage, which I believe is the next section we have for
It
that.
is the next section.
Yes, if they fail, they will take D3 mortal wounds. I was thinking that this detachment ability would be labeled as psychic, so that there's a fun option of tying in your librarians for that, but also having some defense for some armies where the mortal wounds element could be considered a psychic attack, so that
Mhm.
if they have defense against that, there's a fun counterplay there. So it's sort of a risk versus reward. You can have your units risk damaging themselves at the cost of amplifying your output into a unit. This would let your smaller units, MSU, your power armor guys, your small guns all present more of a threat, and it sort of encourages you less to have like big bricks of hard to kill, um, and focus more on that. You
Yeah.
could lean into Dread Knights with this one, but then you're also hurting them more. There's a lot of parts that I was interested for this.
So we also put in the caveat specifically. It has to be a psyker unit, so you can't just go buy 10
Rhinos,
rhinos or whatever.
servitors,
Yeah. I guess
Red
Razorbacks,
Raiders,
because they don't have. No, Razorbacks are still dedicated transports, right?
they are.
Yeah. Anyway. Um, yeah, so it's at the end of the movement phase because there is no psychic phase anymore. So I was like, it has to be at the end of the movement phase or the start of the shooting phase. So we picked the end of the movement phase. And basically, the Grey Knights are hyping themselves up to take out targets. So, you know, if you have one interceptor squad running around in the backfield by itself, it can do it to one unit, and now they're hitting on twos. That's still a powerful buff. But if you have two of them working together, now they could do +1 to wound and +1 to hit onto one unit, and then they could really fuck them up. And then if you want to just drill into one thing, like I don't know, a big Land Raider or I don't know, a Demon Primarch or something, you could
Very fitting.
have everybody, you know, and then once you hit that third one, you're smiting them over and
Yeah.
over and over and over. It also makes it so you really want to bring chaplains.
They are definitely a fun option for this one because
Yeah.
chaplains have a 5-up leadership,
Right.
which when you're doing leadership tests, the difference between a 5-up and a 6-up is really big. So
So stratagems.
yeah.
I'll take the first one, and then, well, I mean, I guess the first one is True Silver Armor. We all know it. We all love it.
you
It's great.
you you can hop to the next one if you
Yeah.
want because
I was gonna I was gonna say. Aether Stride. One CP. This has to be done in your shooting phase. To be completely honest with you guys, we stole the wording exactly from Fire and Fade from Eldari.
and Torch Star's Gambit from Tau.
Oh, right. Oh,
Yeah.
and we did remove the if it's an aircraft part because there are no Psyker Grey Knight aircraft, so that was just a waste of wording. Anyway, it's Fire and Fade for a Grey Knight unit. It's great. We didn't put this on interceptors, I realize, so
So yes, it could in theory work with them, which is kind of funny.
24-inch shooting interceptors.
Hindsight, probably that one needs to change a little bit.
It's okay.
But the concept of a move shoot move for
Right.
psycho units doesn't work on Land Raiders, thankfully, because that would not be fun. Terminators go 5 inches, Power Armor will go 6 unless it's interceptors, and Druid Knights would go 8 inches because they're only 8-inch move based.
Right.
So it's
So, oh,
it's a fun little option. It does let you have units where if you want to poke them out to try and do your Empyric Dominion and then shoot them and then try and back out, you get some choices for that. I see some people are already
yeah.
raving about a Fire and Fade for
Because
Grey Knights.
who knew that Fire and Fade is good, guys? You could drop Fire and Fade into any army except World Eaters, and they'd like it.
I feel like World Eaters would find a way. Forge Fiends. They'd bring World Eaters Forge Fiends.
They don't. I think the rule for World Eaters is they have to kill the Forge Feed on the ship before they hit the ground because it's not going to kill anything in melee.
It's Fire and Fade, but forward.
Yeah. So it does say you can't charge, at least in this phase that you use it. One of the benefits, with Daniel pointed out later, is that this like purgation squads, man, like they can now get exactly where you need them to, and you're hopefully not charging with them anyway. Um, so, um, and with that in mind, we're gonna go to the next one, which is all you.
So with the emphasis on this being more of a psychic themed detachment, I figure having something leaning towards that would be more fitting. So we have hexagramic wards for 1 CP. It's in the shooting or fight phase, just after an unit selected as target. Um, one Grey Knight unit in your army gets a 4 Philip band against psychic attacks and mortal wounds. So it's very similar to what Custodies have, I believe, for their one detachment. This would sort of be our equivalent 2000 Suns in a way, going back and forth. Um, it also depends on the wording. I probably want to include or gets targeted by a psychic attack. But the whole point on having a mortal wound, feel no pain against psychic attack stratagem felt fitting.
Yeah. And you'll notice that a lot of these stratagems for like the power we toned them down in this attachment because we felt like the basic ability to have +1 to hit and +1 to wound,
and then do mortal wounds.
yeah, was pretty good. So you'll notice that like, wow, those last stratagems in that Aegis detachment were wild. This one is okay. That's on purpose. That's called game design.
Hopefully, good game design.
Right. Empyric Declamation, 1 CP, your movement phase, 1 Grey Knight Psyker unit, so no land rating on this one.
Mm-hmm.
But when marking per the Empyric Dominion rule, instead of applying 1 mark, you apply 2 and apply the effects of both. So again, if you have that little interceptor unit flying around in the backfield and it needs to make a charge and kill a thing that's a little tougher than they're probably ready for, it can do 1 Empyric Dominion test and get +1 to hit and +1 to wound onto that target.
Or if you really need, just for the chance of it, if you already have 2 marks, if you go to apply the third, you can do it again to try and do 2d3 mortal wounds.
Yeah. So like you get a lot of there's a lot of play here. You could do it, go like if 1 mark is already applied, you could do 2 and 3 with this. So it's 1 CP. Anyone can do it that's a psyker, so your Dread Knights can do it, your Purgation Squads can do it. Yeah. You can see how Daniel was saying this detachment plays like you want to bring MSU. You don't want to bring bricks with this because it's fewer Empyric Dominion rolls that you're going to
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Then the next one we have is a fun little one, Rebuff the Heretic. So as we're developed, I'll just go over the stratagem first. So it's in your opponent's charge phase. You select 1 marked enemy unit that just declared a charge, and you get to subtract 2 from the charge roll. When we started coming up with some of the ideas, once we had come up with the idea of rather than just doing straight mortal wounds, having a +1 hit, +1 wound, and then start doing mortal wounds, I sort of started drawing some conclusions between like some of the Votan judgment tokens, except these are more temporary rather than a permanent fixture. But having some strats that play off of units that are already marked, being able to debuff them or have something that affects them, kind of seems like a fun option for that. This way, it forces you to expose yourself in order to get these benefits. You can't just be sitting behind a wall unless you do the move, shoot, move, but that's a whole thing. But your opponent has to be in a spot where you can see them in order to do this.
And you'll also notice there's no CP regen.
Yes.
Yeah. Only the first detachment had anything like that. Sanctified Kill Zone, 1 CP. When or in your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit that has been marked has resolved its attacks. So then you target 1 Psyker unit from your army, and then it can shoot as if it was your shooting phase, but it must target that enemy unit that just attacked. Yeah. And it can only do so if it's an eligible target. Yeah. So if they have lone op or something and you're out of range, you can't shoot them. If you can't see them, you can't shoot them. All that stuff. So
and they have to have been a marked target. So if they
Yeah,
were hiding and you didn't mark them before, they can shoot freely without reprisal.
right.
So I was
So
a
a little bit of
little
that counterplay going on.
I was a little worried initially about just like a 1 CP shoot back, but it's Grey Knights, so shooting isn't monumentally massive. It's a lot of supplemental shooting.
Yeah.
Um, and in this case, there's a couple clauses that need to be filled out first before you can shoot back comfortably.
Yeah.
Um,
So this is one of those ones where like you still want to have a Dread Knight or two in your list because that's the best shooting we have. That's a psyker.
yep.
All right, enhancements. We'll have you start first on this one, Daniel.
All right. So the first one we have here is Memento of Janus. It's a 10-point enhancement. If the bearer's unit pass an Empyric Dominion test this round, increase the attack characteristic of this model's melee weapons by 2 in the fight phase. It's a fun, cute little one. It doesn't require you to pass a leadership test at 1 point in your movement phase in order to gain that for the round. Um, so there's a chance they could just do nothing, and you just hurt yourself while you're hoping to get it. But
Yeah.
also, it's a fun little, like if you have a Brotherhood champion, now they're going up to 8 attacks, I believe, which makes them pretty fun to use. You could, in theory,
8
you
attacks with precision.
and potentially rerolls.
Yeah. I think he rerolls all hits and wounds into characters, right?
Yes, he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. So you could definitely snipe a character that's not,
You
I don't know.
just realized
Gaz.
you could put this on a Grandmaster and Dread Knight.
That's actually what I built this for, to be in there. I stole this one from the CSM Slaves to Darkness. I
Yes.
think it's just straight up stolen from that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect for a Grandmaster Dread Knight. So now you have a Grandmaster Dread Knight, 7 attacks, hitting on 3s with the hammer.
2s if it's a marked target.
2s, that's right. If it's a marked target, strength 14. So the +1 to wound, if it has that, probably isn't that great. But anyway, yeah. But 7 attacks, like now, and then if it's a monster or vehicle, you're rerolling all the things. So
Now you could really go into some greater demons.
yeah, for sure. So I thought this was fun. 10 points is probably a little cheap, but like again, all the point stuff is kind of like it
You
only
get
affects one model, so like, but you can put it on a Grandmaster.
put into a rough bracket of rough points, and then it can be adjusted depending on
Yeah,
balance, kind of idea. So
absolutely, yeah. The Melius Demonica, 15 points. Grey Knight's model, you can reroll the charge roll. It's great. Who doesn't want, for a melee army, who doesn't want to be able to reroll your charge?
yep.
You can't stick it on Drago, so you're gonna stick it on someone else, which is cool. And then
The next one we have is the Bones of Falcothan. This one, I know the original idea we had was about just having a um, until end of turn improved invulnerable save of like a 3-up just for the bearer.
yeah,
I was kind
well,
of
it
wondering.
was the bearer's unit, but yeah.
Oh, it was okay.
Yeah.
This one I figured having the option of leaning more into support for power armor Grey Knights. This one is just models in the bearer unit have a 4-point invulnerable save. So again, precision can pick up the character and remove the invulnerable save of the unit. It's useless for Grandmaster and Dread Knight. It's useless for Terminators. It's really just for the power armor guys.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put it with Crow and Purifiers. The only units that could get this would be Strike Squads and Purgation Squads, but it's still more support and emphasis on trying to use them a bit more. So it was kind of a concept I was kind of curious about trying out.
It definitely kind of fills one of those whole, like, people pop into the Grey Knight Discord regularly. And by the way, if you're not on there, you should be. Great people. And they're like, what about like a 10-man strike squad led by a bro champ? And you're like, well, man, like a Forge Fiend picks up 8 of those 11 guys in one shooting phase because they don't have an invul.
And if you run into Thousand Suns, the unit just vanishes like dust in the wind or all sorts of things.
Yeah. So like having an invul at least get like protects against those -3 AP plasma shots from Forge Fiends and things like that. It gives you an ability to maybe get stuck in or get charged and use that fights first on the Brochamp. Uh, but again, if you're using the previous enhancement we talked about for the +2 attacks on the Brochamp, you don't have this one. So
Yeah.
Uh, TS is no armor saves. You still get invul saves.
Yes, you do.
So, yeah, which is why you made that comment about how power armor would just disappear against, because they don't have an invul to fall back to. So they get no save at all and they just die to a million flamers that wounded them, even though they're strength 4 flamers or whatever.
Yeah, with full rolls.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So, which might have been that actually, now that I think about it, that might have been what Damn Legion meant, and I just totally treated him like he didn't know that. But whatever. Sorry, man. If that's that's what you actually meant, whoopsie, and I apologize. And the last one is Inlaid Teleportation Matrix. So remember, we wanted some movement jank. I guess we had Fire and Fade, but now we have some more. This is basically a reverse rapid ingress in your turn. So once per game in your opponent's movement phase, your opponent's one unit that is selected to enter reserves using Teleport Assault instead of I guess so they're not entering reserves, right? Anyway, when you pick them up, you can, instead of put them off the board, you can just put them right back onto the board next to the bearer of this unit, with the constraint of you have to end wholly within 6 inches of the bearer's unit and no closer than 9 inches from any enemy unit. So you can grab that Grandmaster and plop him right next to your unit, and then guess what? It was the end of the opponent's phase, and now they get to move and shoot.
Oh, so you mean instead of going,
yeah,
wording, whatever, but the intention is
the wording is bad. I'm sorry.
Instead of just being pulled, that's fine. Instead of just being pulled off the table, you just reposition them elsewhere on the table immediately.
Right. It's basically
rapid ingress.
It's a 30-point rapid ingress with supreme caveats, because you have to be wanting to go where that unit is in the first place. You can only do it once a game, but it is 30 points. So if we have in the game a toilet bowl on the board usually, where one flank breaks, and so everybody kind of swirls one way or you swirl the other way, is how the game generally goes. This lets you just be like, this is my weak flank, fuck it, I'm out of here. You move back onto your strong flank.
The fun thing as well is it's not the bearer going to another unit, it's another unit being pulled to the bearer.
Right.
So there is some counterplay for opponent of, hey, this unit here, they can realize that at one point you can just pull another unit and assist.
Right.
So it's less of a gotcha potentially of trying to figure out where this unit can show up. It's more so working around.
Now I thought about that too, have the bearer go to another unit, but I thought it would be better from a game design standpoint if it had that restriction. So anyway, they basically say, "Oh no," and they pull you to them. So yeah. Oh, anything else you want to say on that, Daniel?
Nope.
I'm sorry.
Nope, it works out perfectly. I like the way this one's set up, and then we can get into the list I had thought up,
which you put this together while I was making dinner. I have not seen this list.
So this, if you don't mind me reading out and explaining it, is Castellan Crow, 2 Brotherhood champions, one with the Memento of Janus for the extra attacks, and the other with Bones of Felkelthin. But now that you pointed out the Grandmaster Dread Knight, I'm considering that. There's a Tech Marine that I've added in with the Malleus Demonica. There's 2 10-man strike squads, 2 5-man interceptor squads, 2 5-man purgation squads, a 10-man purifier squad, and 2 Dread Knights.
Okay, it's a lot of units.
It is. So I figure with the way this detachment's set up is that having a lot of the smaller Brotherhood power armor squads lets you lean further into the Empyric Dominion ability. Try and throw that out more for either supplemental mortal wounds or increasing their output. Um, Strike squads have less attacks than the Brotherhood Terminators, but being able to more easily get +1 hit and +1 wound means they'll do a lot better into some targets. It'll make it so that your purgation squads can try and do a bit more damage at range. They can hit on 3s with indirect if they're hiding from stuff, or 2s if they can see it. The purifiers with incinerators, they can get +1 to hit for their psychic shooting, and then if they get the +1 wound, it helps add to the incinerators they can run. I just kind of wanted more of an emphasis on that for the power armor, and I feel like this detachment would have some choices for that. So, and then having the 10-man purifiers being able to move up, shoot, and then move potentially to hide behind cover, or just having options in that way seems like a fun choice.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a lot of the competitive lists right now, I'm ignoring the ones where it's like I have 3 Land Raider Redeemers and 5 Dread Knights. But like, if you look at, you know, the like double brick lists or whatever, you're rolling out there with like 7 units.
Yep.
A lot of the time. This has 10.
That is correct. It does have
Yeah.
10 units. And
So
has the option to go more MSU.
right.
Like, you could
It
choose
totally
to drop
yeah.
both the Brotherhood champions and probably 5 of the strikes to comfortably add in the Grandmaster with that, and Dread Knight with that enhancement, and then split the strikes up. And then you have even more units running around. Whether or not you want to bring Purifiers with Crow, that could be a meta choice. You could bring other things. There's still some options to bring in Terminators.
I just realized actually, purifiers are a bad call in this list because they get +1 to hit and +1 to wound as they decrease in numbers, but you're already getting that from the detachment.
Yes.
So you probably just want to bring more Dread Knights.
Potentially.
you know,
that's a fair point.
And I do love the Crow of Fire Brick, but it's 335 points, right? And so
that you can swap for the Grandmaster with enhancement and then another strike squad.
Yeah. So I mean, not to say that a shitload of purifying flames isn't good.
Nope. It was more so just trying to make an excuse to bring him on. I do hope this isn't technically part of it, but I hope purifiers get some sort of adjustment when they get our codex.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see what they do for that, but that's a whole different stream topic.
Sure is. Which it's only been an hour and a half, so maybe we'll get into that after this. Question from Damned Legion. What about a detachment similar to TS where you get empiric points to cast abilities and in each HQ brings extra points? I love the T-Suns army rule. I love Cabal points.
So conceptually I like it. The issue then is where you get to the point where when does a detachment ability that becomes more complicated than some army abilities? Like, at one point, is that like, does that work or does that get too much? I wish we had something like that, in all honesty, but I figure something that's sort of a middle ground. That's why I was thinking like the quasi dark packs, would be more fitting. Either way, I think as long as we have something to emphasize more the psychic nature of army would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, when we started brainstorming this, it was an anti-psyker, anti-demon attachment.
Yeah, initially.
Yeah, but it's morphed into this, and I think this is a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be honest. When we get our codex, we're probably gonna get like the like sisters treatment. We're probably gonna get 3 additional detachments. One of those is almost assuredly an anti-demon. And this is a competitive podcast most of the time, so it will never be run by anybody listening to this, probably, at least not in any real way. So we're gonna get 2 new detachments that are possibly competitive. That's my thoughts. I know nothing. But I suspect like we're not gonna get the 8 Brotherhood treatment we got in 9th edition. Which and everybody ran
The one, maybe.
everybody ran
It was either
mostly 2.
yeah, it was rapiers, and then I'm trying to remember when they had that supported vehicles more.
So there was so at first it was Prescient Brethren with 1 Sword Bearer's Grandmaster.
Yep.
And 1 Sword Bearer's Red Knight, I think.
Yeah.
But then when it became you can only pick 1 Brotherhood, everybody either went like Prescient Brethren only, Rapiers only, and then you had a couple Mad Lads running Blades of Victory, but like nobody ran Preservers, no one ran Exactors, and no one ran the Silver Blades because they were terrible. Like, I mean, I think the Silver Blades, you spent 1 CP and you could use your Stormbolters as pistols in combat. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're almost assuredly gonna get an anti-demon.
I do see us just getting 4 detachments like some of the other codexes.
4 including
including teleport.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So 2 new ones. Our index one that's gonna be tweaked probably slightly somehow, and we don't know how. And then 1 anti-demon one. So 4 total.
Yep.
Yeah. But no, I've been saying for a long time I think that the T-Sense stuff is really, really good. And that's the end of our presentation. Although I think we already have a lot of topics we want to discuss.
So I will bring up, there was one other concept that I had in mind for one of them, but we never really got into it, and I don't know whether or not they'll do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of thinking of the idea of a detachment that leans more into the teleport assault ability itself. Having sort of triggered effects for when a unit is set up from the teleport assault ability, either enemy units within like 12 inches or a enemy unit has had to do something, do a test, or you get to pick them to get benefits against them. So the whole idea of focusing on the arriving from teleport assault and getting a benefit from that, sort of rewarding using the army ability. The only issues, I feel like the theme then would overlap a bit with the already current like teleport strike detachment. Like the current one we have, the index, the whole theme is the teleport assault or teleporting around.
Right.
So I feel like they'll just overlap with the theme a bit. So
I mean, it's an interesting mental exercise, right? Like that's what this whole thing started as. We were just 2 dorks talking to each other on Discord, and then it became content. So like, yeah, I don't know, man. I like that sounds cool to me because I mean, as you play your games now, right? Like, remember we have 7 units. We can pick up 3 of them at the end of our opponent's turn, assuming we're not in combat, which is where we probably want to be anyway. So like, I pick up 1 to 2.
Yeah,
most turns.
They're either in combat or they're on objectives, and I don't want them leaving the objective.
Right.
Or they're close enough where I would be better off staying where I am and moving closer rather than teleporting.
Yeah. Like if my 14-inch moving, charging, shooting Dread Knight is already 9 inches away from a unit.
Or it's like, oh, I'm 12 inches away right now. I'll just walk.
Thank you. Yeah. Like but if you gave benefits to like, okay, you can sit there, or if you go back into the teleportarium and come back down, you can land next to this enemy unit and force them to do a battle shock and maybe fail, and then they or something. I don't know. You know, like
the battle shock detachment. Yes.
Well, no. I'm not. I was trying to think of like delaying them scoring, or maybe you lower their OC by 1 and now you can take an objective, something like that, right? Like there's a lot of cool shit you could do where you're like, it doesn't have to be, all right, you come out of Deep Strike, and guess what? Now you got +1 to hit, +1 to wound, +1 damage. Like, yeah, that's good. It's
But
bonkers, and it's not good game design, but like,
give me some spice.
yeah. So like lowering OC, I mean that was my idea with the battle shock thing, and then I remembered it just goes away at the top of the command phase anyway, and they score regardless, so it doesn't matter. Um,
Lower OC, you could have a -1 hit penalty for any unit that's arrived from teleport assault until the
so
next
Haloed
turn.
in Soulfire, but or the
Stealth, if
old
you will.
old Halo in Soulfire from ninth was -1 a hit, I think.
Yes, I think something like that. Something along that lines would be cool. You could do sort of like a mixed version of like if you teleport down, you can pick a unit within 12 and do a bit of mortal wounds. Just sort of like them landing in the Aegis, the force of the Aegis hitting that unit.
Yeah,
If anyone's ever read The Emperor's Gift, I highly recommend
it's
it.
the
There's a
opening scene.
the opening scene,
Yeah,
and I'm not going to spoil it too much, but at one point there's a whole bunch of Grey Knights that hit us like teleport down, and the description of the Aegis like affecting their surroundings is so cool.
it's phenomenal. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a reason why it's one of the best, even though I don't like the Months of Shame part
Yeah,
personally.
that part's sad, but at the same time, like it's not like they won't get it too much. I recommend you check it out.
Yeah, it's a good book. You should read it.
Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, like, when are we getting our Hyperion model, man? When are we getting our like chief librarian or our prognosticar named leader
They've
Hyperion model?
done it for sisters. They have the
That
oh
model
my,
kicks ass. Did you see that new model?
oh
So
my
good.
god,
The
yes.
new sisters model. Mm.
So sisters have one from a book series. You have
Hmm.
custodes with Valerian and Alea. There's been a couple Space Marine characters I think at certain points they've released models for. Trying to think if there's been much else other than that, but they've at least done a couple, and I wouldn't mind a little bit of love there, please, GW. Give us an interceptor character.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, well, um, so we didn't talk about it mostly because I think we ran out of time, and so we said it'll stay the same. But teleport strike force, or our index, um, like the only change I would make is I just think Halo and Soulfire sucks.
Ugh.
Like,
That it needs to change or it needs to go.
yeah,
Like
I said it earlier. Like, the Band-Aid fix is you leave it like it is for 1 CP, and then you add the qualifier of, if you want to use this retroact or like reactively to not be targeted in your opponent's shooting phase, then it's 2 CP.
make it a battle tactic again.
Or that. Well,
It,
yeah, because then
it
grandmasters could make it free.
so it was a battle tactic from release, and when they did the bloody battle tactic change for stratagems about CP adjustment, they changed it from a battle tactic to I think a strategic ploy now, which is frustrating because we weren't even that crazy at the start.
We were
It's
so expensive.
so terrifying, wasn't it? Um, it's either once per game for free with a Grandmaster, or a Grandmaster and Dread Knight you could pay 1 CP instead of 2, which it's still like 1 CP in advance.
Well, it would stop him from getting shot off the board when he's trudging up so slowly
Pretty much.
compared to his normal buddies.
It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not that bad. But
Yeah. But like, the detachment has really grown on me. That's the only stratagem like I never ever use.
yeah, same.
Like, Death from the Warp has niche but good uses. Miss you obviously use all the damn time. That is the best
My
stratagem in the game.
favorite time to use mists is when I don't have to use it, and my opponent is just in their own head about trying to never trigger mists. It is the best stratagem I will never have to use some games.
Yeah. It's really gnarly.
it's just having like, oh, you want to move there? Do you want to trigger miss? And you just see them like they just get into their own head. They're like, oh God, I can't move, otherwise he'll trigger this ability. When
I, I
sometimes the answer is just like, all right, I'm gonna move within range of these 5 units. Which one do you want to save? That's the
my my first game of 10th ever was against my buddy playing his Deathwing, or sorry, Dark Angels. um, and he had two Redemptors on the other sides of a ruin, and I had a Librarian and some Terminators on the middle objective, but he realized to move either of the Redemptors to get into range and see them and shoot, he would be triggering miss, and he's like, I can't, I don't, I can't do anything, and I'm like, nope. He's like, I hate this, and I was like, yeah. Like,
everyone does.
whole bunch of your super shooty robots can't even move to shoot me unless they want me to not be there.
Yep.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I don't know one that people don't. It's kind of a swing and a miss sometimes, but the Radiant Strike, I've had some games where it's done absolutely nothing for me and it hurts. I had one game where I did it twice and I got no devastating wounds.
Yeah, I've done that.
Just happened. But sometimes when you use it and when it does happen, even if it's just like you have like a full break of Terminators that attack, even if you only get like 4 or 5 devastating wounds, the fact that they happen after all your attacks and they're guaranteed damage going through has helped me win games.
Yeah, it's kind
Um,
of like Mortal Wounds in ninth. I mean, like Mortal Wounds. Is there really? Is there an instance anymore of like Mortal Wounds being done in conjunction with a normal attack? That was everywhere in ninth, but I don't think it's a thing in like we have like Vortex, which is an ability that does mortal wounds, but then it's done. It doesn't do other stuff. But like the spillover from mortal wounds in ninth has like helped me kill stuff that was impossible otherwise. So,
mhm.
yeah. I had a Grandmaster Dread Knight go into the Avatar of Cain, got overwatched, made 4 out of my 5 saves, so I was alive with like 1 wound or something. Um, and I spent 2 CP to rate or 1 CP for Radiant Strike, be, uh, because of the Grandmaster's thingy, and I did 0 devastating wounds.
Yep.
I still killed it, but like I
Good.
really wanted to kill it. I wanted to make sure it was dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
It always
Wow.
feels gambly on the Grandmaster on Dread, but it's this only for 1 CP is a nice benefit, and the full rerolls he can get helps with that a lot. Hmm.
I've
It's interesting.
also had the lethal hits on the charge from Terminators just go tits up too. Where
Yep.
like I'm like, okay, I got 40 attacks and I got 6 from Drago. I'm gonna get in there and like averages, I should have like 6 to 7. I don't know what the actual average is off the top of my head, and it's like, oh, I got 3.
Yep. Yep. But then I've also had ones where your rolls like, all right, 11 lethal hits. Sure, I'll take that.
Yeah, you're like, that'll
And
never happen again. But
yep. But
glad it
I'll
happened on my
make
first
it
game at a GT.
one time.
Yeah, yeah. Um, do you want to talk about? Yeah, fuck it. Let's just do it. This is all theoretical. So if you like keeping reiterating what I said at the beginning, like when we came up with these detachment ideas, we weren't looking at gonna change any points. We weren't gonna change any data sheets. We have to modify each individual piece by itself because otherwise we have no frame of reference. Like we aren't designing this army from scratch. So we need to keep that frame of reference. So ignoring all the detachments we just created, looking at the meta in the game as we know it now, like who was it? Was it Astragoli on the Discord that's like, our data sheets are garbage, so our detachment rules have to be really good.
I
Not
think it
like
was Astro.
Custodes, where like their
Detachment.
data
Their
sheets are
are
super
insane.
good. Yeah. So their detachments can't be too good, or else you just right. So if you were to fix the glaring issues you see in our data sheets, how would you fix it? Like, where would you start?
I mean, the common sentiment you will get is give us back demon hammers.
Yeah, that's.
You could hear that a lot.
I know.
I
I don't
would be
agree
okay with.
anymore.
Yeah, the furthest I would see that would be maybe just the Justicars being the only one with the like
Mm,
enhanced Nemesis Demon Hammer or the enhanced
sure.
Nemesis Force Weapon.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like if there's going to be any sort of change though at that point, that'll involve a range refresh where they will follow whatever the kit will
Right.
provide you.
Yeah.
Um, um, I feel like I would start with the leaders. So, for instance, the Brotherhood Captain, the Grandmaster on foot, Brotherhood Champion, Librarian. I feel like out of anything that could be adjusted, it would be them. And then the special weapons for the infantry on foot. Those would be the two things I would look at most.
Okay.
Um, the incinerator is our best option just because it's actually decent. I do feel like in comparison to some other options, incinerators are alright at best. They are a strength 6 auto heading
Yeah.
heavy
But the
flamer.
but one of the reasons I think incinerators are such a good choice is that is Overwatch is so good in 10th.
I mean, even beyond that, the biggest reason is that we don't have that much to benefit for rerolls or
Yeah, yeah,
keywords,
I agree.
and they're the most reliable output. We don't have reliability as much with the other weapons.
Yeah, that's kind of why I went ape shit in that first detachment. Was like, let's just give you all this special
All
things
the keywords.
because we don't have rerolls. You know, so like you might as well get lance and lethal hits and do this other stuff because like doesn't matter.
We
I
don't
mean,
have
there's no
rerolls.
way to really horrifically abuse it. I guess I should say.
We don't have rerolls. We only have one source of lethal hits, which is through only charging and only for melee weapons on
Mm-hmm.
one unit.
Yep,
Sustain
our
hits
best unit.
is yes, in my opinion, I agree. Sustain hits is only from a single character, and it's only for psychic attacks, which is a decent amount. There's not too much other than storm bolters that wouldn't benefit. But at that point, I would almost them just make it apply to all attacks rather than just psychic,
Yeah, yeah,
because sustain one on storm bolters is a huge deal.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's just so many attacks. Like, yeah, so
oh,
sane ones would be great.
that yeah, I would
Yeah.
honestly take anything to make storm bolters feel a little bit more impactful, even if it's just more volume without more damage or AP.
I I don't want to lose track. I do want to remind everybody, like one of the reasons we do this live is like if if you have questions or comments or whatever, like throw them in chat, man.
Yep.
Like interact with us. Otherwise, we could record this and make it look super professional, but instead you just get to see this.
Two nerds talking about Grey Knights
Oh, yeah.
passionately.
Um, so Stormbolters, like Stormbolters feel either amazing or completely useless. Like into Eldari, into Sisters, into anything T3, like Stormbolters feel like they carry so hard into orcs like T5 and especially into any like into knights. You're like, all right, I'm moving
You're
on sixes. Like,
oftentimes
I'm
like, all
not
right.
even gonna shoot this. Yeah.
I've had times where it's like, all right, here's like 30 Stormbolter shots, and it's like, all right, one wound, or all right, no wounds. All right, let me just quickly get these guys out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes you'll get lucky and like chip a wound from 40 shots.
but yeah, I
But
feel
other
like
times you'll see, oh, I have 10 Terminators and a Librarian with line of sight onto a 10-man, you know, what's the bog standard Eldari infantry? Like the ones that don't,
oh, Guardians.
yeah. Like, and you're like, they're dead. They're so dead.
They are
Like, yeah.
they're gone.
Yep. It's over.
Um,
Just, you might as well pull them now.
but
Yeah.
so going back to the idea of so special weapons changes, they could either leave the side cannon as is and just give it ignores cover, or not do that and instead give it AP. I don't think they should do both for the regular side cannon, just one.
Oh my god. If they made this regular side cannon -2 ignores cover,
That
that's
would be
effectively -3. That's effectively plasma. Like, that's
that would be
really
very
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, -1 ignores cover, I think, would be fine.
I think the silencer, because it's AP0 and it's sort of a quasi assault cannon, I feel like it needs to have devastating wounds.
Agreed.
It's not reliable, but it's still the point of leaning in that direction. Um,
Yeah.
then that makes it an interesting choice for purgation squads hiding behind buildings where they just vomit shots, and then you're just looking for sixes for dev or just to pick up chaff
Yeah.
a lot more. But back to the character changing ideas. This is going to sound bad because we love them, and everybody that plays Grey Knights,
Don't touch my libbies.
I think they need to change somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So I love them, and they're one of the only ways we can feel like a psychic army right now. If we get a detachment that gives us some sort of benefit that feels like a psychic army, I think Vortex needs to either change or go away for a different ability. Um,
I painted 2 more librarians, man.
hey, I didn't say make them bad or useless. I just said change them. They could be when they join a unit, give all their attacks lethal hits.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible.
Yeah,
Bye, Drago.
but
3 libbies all day, every day.
that would help a lot. But the mortal wound ability either it feels great, but in a way it can also lead to a negative play experience I've seen. Like I've ran into a decent amount of players that I'll start using the librarians, and I can see it's not always fun for them to deal with because it is just here's a bunch of mortal wounds, here's a bunch of mortal wounds, here's a bunch of mortal wounds. You have nothing you can do about it. That unit's dead. I played on stream for one channel, and we had a little in-house ladder tournament. And the third round, I went into my buddy Gary. And Gary, he's a very good player, but he has not been able to play against Grey Knights during 10th edition yet. He is a child as well, so he's been busy. And this was his
I know
first
them
game
feels.
going into Grey Knights, and he goes first, which is good for me. And he's running double Redeemer Black Templars in Gladius,
Okay,
and
I saw this game, but yeah.
we're doing Sights of Power and Hammer and Anvil, and he just pushes up a Land Raider just to get ready on the one flank and tries to just brace and get ready. And I respond by essentially having I had two solo librarians and one in unit. I picked up the one librarian at the end of his turn, and the other two basically advanced or moved into get line of sight of the Redeemer, and the solo one stayed outside of Overwatch range for the big flamers. And I proceeded to do 9 mortal wounds and then 4 mortal wounds just from the first two vortexes because I spiked to 6. And at that point, the Land Raider was dead. I just threw a grenade to finish it off, and then I still had a whole bunch more to put into the guys that popped out. But it's damage that cannot be interacted with, and
Mm.
not having any form of interaction can lead to negative play experience with some players. Um, I agree. Love Libby's. They help fill a gap for us right now, and I feel like once we get some more tools or options, it sort of like what's a good example I could put? At this point, they are somewhat of a crutch for us. I'm gonna put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, that was the only way we could do any damage to vehicles.
Correct.
Like anything over anything T7 or over was like, ugh, just such a horrible slog.
If it
You
was
know?
above T7 and had a 2-up armor save with access to Armor of Contempt,
Yeah,
that's gonna be a grind.
yeah. You're wounded on 5s, and they're saving, only against AP1. So
Yeah,
looking at you, custodes.
but
Feel no pains.
oh god.
Fights first.
But I do think that if we can get some more tools, switching the characters to either be different roles for support or make them more beneficial
Hmm.
might be a good choice.
Going back
Um,
to your game, the announcer whose name I forgot. At the end of the game, he's like, "Yeah, man, you never played against Grey Knights, so you were probably gonna lose." It's like not. It's like I'm not trying to be a jerk or whatever, but like they're if you don't know what they can do, they're tough. They're tough. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Um, I've had games, specifically in that game as an example, but I've had other
Yeah.
games where the dealing with a unit with sigil is hard for some players, and then dealing with Mists of Deimos. Um, I've had games where people just never shoot at the unit with sigil of exigence, and that unit basically just gets to walk around without
Yeah.
fear of getting shot at.
Which is I mean, that's where it wants to be. Yeah.
But then I have had also players move their army up and then just shoot it to get it out of the way, but they don't screen or brace to deal with that issue one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And so there's openings for me to set up for essentially what is a free rapid ingress turn 1 if
Yeah.
I'm going second.
Mm.
Um, that unit does take some work to deal with, but there are ways to deal with it. And then with Mists of Demos, I've had, like I've said, players will get in their own mind worried about triggering mists, when sometimes the best option is to just say, hey, I'm going to move in range of this one unit. Are you going to trigger mists? Yes? All right, perfect. I'm going to move the rest of my army here. Or,
Yeah.
hey, I'm putting my entire army within range of these 3 units. Which one do you want to save?
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. You want that threat overload.
yeah.
But to your point about the sigil is I actually had a game against Guard. And he's an experienced player, but he's coming back like for 10th, and I think he's only played like 4 or 5 games. I think his last game he's played was in like 6th or something. And he did the same thing. Like he has his Basilisk or his Manticores. I can never, the ones with the big guns, not the missile launchers. Anyway, and I know they're indirect with like a 72-inch range, so like I know I can't get out of range. So he's like asking me, he's like, "What's the sigil thing do again?" And I'm like, "Well, if you target him, I don't have to, I can move them, and it's basically a deep strike. And it says if they're no longer an eligible target, you can retarget." And he's like, "Okay, so I can't retarget if you move them because this thing has, infinite range and indirect fire." And I'm like, "No." So he shoots at him. I teleport within 9 inches of the Basilisk because he left it hanging out to dry. The next turn, the Paladins were on the Basilisk, killed it, consolidated onto his home objective, into a bunch of guardsmen, which they slaughtered on the next turn. And then they just sat there the whole game, basically going like this and like having a tea party. And he's like, "Well, shit." I'm like, "Yep." Yep. So I can see how like sigil is really bad, but then people will try to do this thing where it's like, "All right, I'm gonna fire like a bolt gun at him, so now and so now you have to grab the unit." I'm like, "No, this is May, and you're shooting at Terminators. I'm not gonna move for one Stormbolter or something." Like,
and I mean, if you're putting enough just to kill like 1 or 2 Terminators, sometimes I might want that.
yeah,
Because if they're regular Terminators, I'll just stand back up.
yeah,
Closer.
yeah, exactly. I'll be closer to you. Yeah,
And closer.
yeah,
And closer.
it's really funny.
It is.
Because I don't know, like even after you explain the rule, and again, the game is complicated and like it's another army, it's not your army, so sometimes the like nuances go in one ear and right out the other. But like, no, I don't have to pull them. So if you're gonna fire one las cannon, they're not going anywhere because they're already threatening the middle, which is where I want them. If you have 3 Forge Fiends staring at them, bet your fucking ass the first time the first one targets them, they're gone. But like, yeah, exactly. So, Miss is really, there was a click in my Eldari friend's head with Miss where he realized, oh, it's at the end of your movement. They have to end the movement there. And I'm like, yeah. Like, it's not like Overwatch where it start or end. And it's not like anywhere in between. So you can fall back. And as long as you fall back 9 inches, because he was asking because he had a Falcon. The Falcon
Oh,
can move like what 14 or something.
fast.
So he could easily move 9 and be nowhere near. And he's like, "Oh, okay, cool." And like things started to click, and I'm like, "Oh no, I can't rely on my crutch anymore." He's figuring it out.
Hmm.
Yeah, good times. But
I have it.
it does feel bad. Some like if you feel like you got him, that can feel bad.
I like I can try and explain things as much as possible, but it's not even the gotcha part. It's the non it's like I said earlier with the librarians, it's the non interactivity. I've played against players where it feels like there's nothing they can do, and they sort of start getting it, they start getting a bit salty about it.
Yeah,
Which is unfortunate. I don't blame them in ways because it can be a tough army to deal with. Because rather than
yeah,
some armies where they'll trade units, they'll like CSM, they'll throw out their 5 legionaries of the Chaos Lord, hit something, they kill it, and then expect to die on the clapback. Grey Knights is will go in, pick off a part of their army, they go after us, and when we just move to the other side of the board elsewhere and
yeah.
start
Do it
picking
over
up out of
there.
there,
Yeah.
and they try to move closer, then we vanish, then rapid ingress immediately and deal with this, and then like I've had games where I lose maybe a couple Terminator models and they've stood
Yeah.
back up.
Yeah,
Um,
I've had those games too against my Eldari buddy, and he's like, "I hate this," and
ah,
and like he was having fun, he was laughing and stuff, but he's like, "Yeah, this is," and I'm just like murdering his army, and I lost. I think at the end of that game, I think he had killed 6 total Terminators, but 4 had come back, so I'd lost 2 whole models, and I'm like, "Man, I don't even." And he's like, "What did I do wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't know your army, so I can't really help you."
um,
Um,
as when
but
it comes
yeah.
as far as more for Eldari from like the Discord I've heard about the Reddit posts, the best option for them when fighting Grey Knights is often just to kneel over and cry and hope things aren't as bad.
Excellent,
Um,
because they were a scourge for so long.
so I have a buddy who started playing. He has an Eldari collection, and he picked them immediately as soon as 10th dropped, and he was on a rampage through RTTs, just mercilessly bullying people with it. Still having fun, not being a bad sport,
Sure.
but there started being jokes about him being a war criminal to that point. And I hadn't played against this Eldari yet. I was playing Grey Knights, getting practice up. I had a rough idea. I think I played into Eldari 1. He had 3 fire prisms. He had one of the night spinners, a bunch of the warp spiders, some hawks, and I think a unit of shadow specters at the time. There's a
But did he
couple of
have
little.
the big fuck off mortal wound cannon guaranteed 12 mortal
This
wound?
this was after they changed
Oh,
it.
okay.
This
Okay.
was
The Wraith
uh
Knights. That
yeah,
that 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 was it. The Wraith Knight Scourge.
yes. This was like September. So this was after they got their first bump, but they were still doing very good. And he was still on a tear. And he had never fought Grey Knights before. So that's where that key's in.
Hmm.
And I run into him round 2 at RTT. I'm excited. He's very confident. We start the game. Um, he goes first, kind of cautiously approaches, tries to poke at me. Um, I was at the time I was fiddling with Dread Knights before they got the buff because I was trying to give them a chance. This is the one game where I actually did enjoy them because even before the buffs, they still loved going to Eldari vehicles because fire prisms are toughness 9. But anyways, um, this man who had been on a rampage and hadn't lost a game yet, uh, lost 35 to 100 to Grey Knights, who were like a 42% win rate army,
Yeah.
and was tabled by 3. And after the game, he just kind of stood there in this like shell shock state on his face, and he was like, what do I do?"
Yeah.
Because I got to the point where it's like, "Oh, sweet, the Yen card. I'm a drop down. Throw grenades. Vortex. It has 5 wounds left now before I've even touched it."
Yeah.
And he was like, "What?" So it, yeah, it it's been fun a little bit bullying Eldari players, but not too much.
It's like that. It's like that guy that went to that GT last weekend
Oh my god.
with the new going into bully boys 4 times in a row with and winning every single one. with the uninteractable, what are they? The warp
Uh,
talons?
Warp talons, that's
Yeah,
the whole thing. Well, that's a whole issue in
it's
itself. But yeah,
fantastic.
that's a list.
Fantastic. All right, man. Well, it has been just over 2 hours. Chat has fallen silent. I have to pee because I'm getting over like a sore throat, and I drank 3 pints of water while we were talking, and
You should.
uh, and the
You
lease
should.
has expired. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it. Thank you so much for all your help with the detachments, with just talking, just being nerds.
Thank you for
Um,
including me.
if you want to hang out with Daniel and I more, we are in that Grey Knight Discord. There's a link in the doobly doo down below. You should get in there. Probably one of the most chillest gaming communities I've seen. We sweep out the trash pretty frequently, so come in, have a great time. I have my own Discord down there too if you want to join, and then let me know if you like this kind of content. I know people theory craft all the time. It takes a lot of effort to make content out of it, and so let me know if that's the kind of stuff that you like. What's
I'll
up?
just say there was a while back the leak for what looks like an Agents of the Imperium Codex, and Grey Knights were mentioned it, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with that.
Wait, what?
Did
Did
you not see
something
that?
just did something
No,
just happen?
this was like 2 months ago. There was a
Oh,
there
yeah,
was a leaked image
yeah.
from the printers, which included a bunch of Age of Sigmar stuff, which a lot of us lined up. And one of the pictures was like 6 pages splayed out, and
Mm,
it had some very heavy inquisitorial stuff printed on
yeah,
some of them. And one of them was about Grey Knights on there.
yeah. There was like a little box talking about one of the Inquisitor and their experience with the Grey Knights or something like that, if I
Yeah.
remember right. Yeah. Well, I know we have some people lurking in chat who play Deathwatch, and every time they announce new Inquisitor stuff on Warcom, in the background, there's always like a Deathwatch kill team, like in the mists or slightly obscured, but like obviously there. So I'm wondering if, and that might be why they didn't get points updates in the last Munitorium Field Manual, because they might be released with the Agents of the Imperium Codex. I don't know. Um,
We'll have to see.
I've if they let like every Imperium army take like a kill team, that will be so bizarre. Um,
I would do mean things with that with Grey Knights. Please
with
let
the
me take
with the Proteus kill team, yeah.
either the Proteus or the Spectrum kill. If we no,
Well, the
I don't think.
Spectrus is basically Grey Knight's light, but they have to come in
Yeah,
from strategic, not from
true,
teleport.
true.
You don't get infiltrators in that either. Sorry,
Yeah, I think that's what I
you,
was about to
you
attach.
don't get the bubble. Yeah,
You don't.
they got rid. You used to in ninth. You would get the bubble, but you don't now. Anyway, I I gotta pee. Thank you. Again, and like, comment, subscribe. Daniel, you're on Mid Table Tactics. You should do your shout outs real quick.
Mid-table tactics. Average is achievable. We usually do streams, usually on Sundays, sometimes the weekends. Occasionally, we'll have raw and unfiltered games during the week.
Raw.
Usually, that's where we don't have a producer behind the desk. It's just the two players playing, and it's just top down. Um, Check us out. We usually do casually competitive. We try to play the best we can, but also just do some trash talk, but just talk back and forth and
Sure.
have a fun time.
Cool. There is a link to their YouTube channel also right down below. So I will catch you all later. And don't forget to